Hello and welcome to another Train Spotter from Berkshire video. In this video we talking about how to make the Isle of Wight Island line better. The Isle of Wight Island line runs for 8.5 miles from Ryde Pier Head in the north to Shanklin in the south. Brief history of the island line. The first railway on the Isle of Wight was opened by the Isle of Wight Central Railway in 1862. The first section of the island line was opened by the Isle of Wight Railway in 1864 between Ryde St John's and Shanklin. The line was extended to Ventnor in 1866 and to Ryde Pier Head in 1880 by a joint railway between the London Brighton and South Coast Railway and London and South Western Railway. The Isle of Wight Central Railway opened the Ventnor West branch in 1901. In the 1950s British Rail closed the Ventnor West, Freshwater and Bembridge branch. The Beeching report recommended for closure the majority of the island line apart from a shuttle service in the town of Ryde between Ryde Pier Head and Ryde St John's Road. British Rail originally planned to fit the ex-London Transport standard stock with English electric 4S RKT diesel engines, but instead the decision was made that the island was electrified in 1960. To limit required modifications to the trains. In the late 1980s, Network Southeast replaced the old standard stock with the ex-Northern Line 1938, which was modified into the Class 483. Network Southeast also single-tracked the section of line between Smallbrook Junction and Sandown at the same time as bringing the Class 483s across from the mainland. Current situation. The island line is operated by South Western Railways, which recently replaced the British Rail Class 483s, which are ex-London Underground 1938 stock, for British Rail Class 484s, which are ex-London Underground D78 stock. The island line has 8 stations which are from north to south: Ryde Pier Head, Ryde Esplanade, Ryde St John's Road, Smallbrook Junction, Bradding, Sandown, Lake and Shanklin. The ruling line speed is 60 miles per hour between Ryde St John's Road and Shanklin and 25 miles per hour between Ryde Pier Head and Ryde St John's Road, with Bradding and Sandown passing loops having a speed limit of 15 miles per hour, and the terminals of Ryde Pier Head and Shanklin also have a speed limit of 15 miles per hour. The line is electrified with 750 volts DC third rail like the rest of the southern region. In unusual situation, the line is leased to South Western Railway by Network Rail rather than being maintained directly by Network Rail. Future heavy rail extensions.
The Isle of Wight Council has plans to extend the island from Shanklin to Ventnor and from Ryde to Newport. They considered 2 routes between Ryde and Newport, one via Haven Street and the Isle of Wight Steam Railway and other via Mastone and Sandown. The route via Mastone and Sandown won out, as you would still be able to maintain the excellent Isle of Wight Steam Railways, as well as more settlements would get a direct link to Newport than via Haven Street. Both Newport and Ventnor would get an 2 trains per hour service pattern, as well as having the stations designed for 6 coach services, with each unit being 3 coaches in length. To operate a full timetable, 7 trains will be required off-peak and 14 trains will be required at peak times, with 20 needed in total including spare units. Between Ryde and Sandown you would have the frequency of each branch combined to create a higher frequency than the separate branches for the busiest section of the island line. With the current Office of Rail and Road Policy on level crossings, it would maintain the Isle of Wight Island line grade separated nature from road traffic, and it could be fully grade separated with some new footbridges which would have disabled access. The island line could get resignaled with ETCSL2 with ATO like Thameslink. This has been found to be economically by the Isle of Wight Council.
Future conversion to a tramway.
Some groups are calling for the Island Line to be converted to a tramway. Originally they suggested the use of the T68 trams from Manchester to replace the 483s. However, they are now suggesting some new build trams to replace the 484s. They want it to be converted to a tramway to allow it to better serve the population of the Isle of Wight by running in the streets and therefore be more competitive with the bus. However, the tramway conversion might reduce the time benefits from the Island Line, as the railway takes about half the time of the bus. The tramway idea would remove the famous loading gauge limit of Ryde Tunnel by using the streets through Ryde. This has been found to be uneconomically by the Isle of Wight Council. The new trams would be the Class 399s.
Future conversion to a guided bus. Southern Vectis has argued that the Island Line should be converted to a guided busway to allow their buses to no longer have to compete with Island Line and also allow them to run more buses. However, this brings up many issues, such as environmental ones from the massive increase in pollution in some areas, as the Green Railway will be replaced by a fossil fuel-powered guided busway. I am not sure if this would see new routes or a diversion of existing bus routes, which might mean some settlements lose service altogether. Which would be a backward step in today's world. You are leveling down the settlement rather than doing the government plan of leveling up. This has been found to be uneconomically by the Isle of Wight Council. Which is my favourite option for the future of Island Line? My favourite option is the railway extension option, as it means that you don't have to rebuild some stations as they were already rebuilt for the 484s. The main issue is that there will be no more 484s built ever, and there aren't enough units to cover a full extension to the network, so new units will have to be built for Island Line. Which will break the 60 years tradition of using ex-London Underground stock. However, this would be a good thing, as you would get rolling stock more suited to the island. The new stock would have level boarding at 1115 mm, as that is what the platform height is on the Isle of Wight. The new units might require batteries for the extension to the Island Line, unless the Office of Rail and Road allows the third rail extension, as it is a great separated line. The existing footways would be rebuilt and retained to be out of the way of the extension. Sandown would feature a new alignment so that trains from Ryde can run directly to Newport without a reversal at Sandown. I think the new units should also be longer than the existing units and should be made up of 3 coaches and be able to run in multiples of up to 2 in passenger service and 4 in empty coaching. Stock services. I would like to think the new units would have toilets because of the extended journey times because of the extension, as well as to reduce the chance of another West Worthing incident. The new units would have end gangways to allow for emergency evacuation in the single-bore tunnels of Ventnor and Ryde Tunnel. The new units would have to be built to the more limiting Island Line loading gauge rather than the standard W6 loading gauge used on the rest of the network, as well as being limited to route availability 1, which limits the axle weight to 13.75 metric tons. Most new units are route availability 3 to 6, which is 16.5 to 20.25 metric tons. The layout would be a double track between Ryde Pierhead and Sandown, with 2 single lines beyond, with one heading to Ventnor and the other to Newport, with passing loops at Shanklin and Wroxall on the Ventnor extension and Westone and Newport on the Newport extension. A new depot will be required, so maybe a site next to Smallbrook Junction would be perfect for it, with an extension of the depot shunt link to provide a loop for the depot. Empty coaching stock moves between Smallbrook Junction and the existing Ryde St John's Road train maintenance depot. What could the timetable look like?
Here is an example of what the timetable could look like. The extension timings are based on historical running times for steam traction, so electric traction would be able to do it, as well as the max speed on island was 40 miles per hour during the steam traction era. But it is now 60 miles per hour. With the extensions could be built to accommodate line speeds of up to 60 miles per hour like the existing network. This is what a regular summer service could look like. During the Isle of Wight festival it might be possible to increase frequency between Ryde and Sundown, or maybe even Shanklin, as Lake is the closet station to the festival. With the Sundown option maybe coaches would be required to deal with the fans, however the Shanklin option would remove the need for coaches. It would take 34 minutes to run between Ryde Pierhead and Ventnor and 40 minutes between Ryde Pierhead and Newport.
Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share and subscribe to a train spotter from Berkshire.